Hello. Hi. I'm so glad we get over the technical hurdle. Thank you. Thank you. Um, I'm Patsy. Um, Hello to you, beautiful brothers and sisters of the world. I'm here with our host, Charles and Betsy, and Betsy's partner and also film producer. Oh, excuse me. Actually, I have to turn off the. There we go. So I guess our hurdle won't completely over yet. There we are. So back here again. So we have Charles and Betsy and Agar and our tech support, Todd, Paul, and Marshall. Hi. So what we are going to do here in a minute is to have Charles and Betsy to take over and give us as our official opening. And right now I would like to also mention to you that Todd is going to be inviting you to the on screen after we get into Q&A session, and Paul is here to help us operate the screen, and Marshall is the one that will be receiving the questions from you. So from the Google form that is posted under the description part where you can click to submit your questions after we view the film. And then if you have any question, you can interact with our moderator, which is Marshall and Connie and V and Sherry, if they're all there. And welcome again. And after Betsy and Charles give us our introduction, we will post a Vimeo video link in the chat, which will provide you a much, much better experience than if we stream it out through our Zoom here with this, this gorgeous film, gorgeous story that we'll all appreciate and learn a lot together. Here right now, I would like to officially bring you Charles and Betsy. Enjoy. Thank you.
All right. Hi, everybody. Hi, Betsy. Good to see you. Do you want to do your little intro first, or should I go first?
Sure. First of all, I just want to express my gratitude for you, Charles and Patsy, and all the team here for hosting us today. And this is a really special moment for us. This is a decade of work going into this day of finally being able to share this material with the world. So much gratitude for everyone who's tuned in, and also my partner Edgar, who has been by my side producing this over the past 6 years. And I just look forward to everyone's feedback. And again, thanks, Charles, for being here today and supporting us getting this out to the world.
I would like to just, before we actually show the film, I would like to just offer a few tiny little tips on kind of how to watch it. It is the reason I'm hosting this film on the community, hosting this premiere, isn't necessarily because, yes, here is the truth, but it is feeding a different mythology into our culture, which is so important right now as the dominant mythology is in an advanced stage of breakdown. So this, and my understanding of myth is that regardless of its objective factuality, it always carries truth. And the human being can recognize what is an authentic myth and what is, a fantasy. And I visited Damanhur a number of years ago now, and when I heard their mythology, their story of the world, of history, of the galaxy, I recognized it as an authentic myth, and that's why I'm very honored to be presenting it. And so I I suggest that when you watch it, you don't get too caught up in, is this objectively true or not? And what about this and what about that? But really take it in as a story, fully go there and fully receive it, and trust that your rational mind can perform that integration process moving forward. So that's all I would like to say right now. And we're going to be posting the link in the chat on YouTube. So if everyone could stop, not put tons of comments in there so that everyone can see the link, that would be great. And I will now turn it back over to Patsy, perhaps.
Yes.
And we'll see you afterwards.
Okay. Thank you. And also, I want to let you know I pinned the film at the top of the chat. So if you interact, you will probably still be able to see it at the top pin. And after the 60 minutes, we have 10 minutes of intermission. So you can count from 70 minutes from here on to come back in. And so that 10 minutes extra intermission is so that you could, form your questions or get a cup of tea. Anyway, thank you. See you soon.
happening with that force of information that's being exiled and confined to just the galaxy. If you want to read more about this kind of piece
welcome back. So if some of you are still finishing up, that's okay. That's the nature of watching another through another link, but we get much higher quality. So let's see who's back here. Betsy, are you ready to come on? And
Hi, sure.
hello, welcome back. So
Hi,
if
I'm
some
back
of
too.
you are still finishing up, that's okay. That's the nature of watching another through another link, but we get much higher quality. So let's see who's back here. Betsy, are you ready to come on?
Hi, sure.
Hello, welcome back. So
Hi,
if
I'm
some
back
of
too.
you are still finishing up, that's okay.
Oh, we're getting
that's
a
the nature
repeat.
of watching another through another link, but we get much higher quality. So let's see who's back here. Betsy, are you ready to come on?
Hi, sure.
Hello, welcome back. So
Hi,
if
I'm
some
back
of
too.
you are still finishing up, that's okay.
Oh, we're getting
that's
a
the nature
repeat.
of watching another through another link, but we get much higher quality. So let's see who's back here. Betsy, are you ready to come on?
Say no.
Hi, sure.
Hello, welcome back. So
Hi,
if some of you are still finishing up, that's okay.
Oh, we're getting a
the
repeat.
nature of watching another through another link, but we okay, so now I figure out what the problem is. I think either Betsy or Charles, you might, or maybe some, I don't know who, probably have the YouTube video on and that is also playing. So we're getting a feedback. Because I checked, at first I thought it was my end, but it's not. So would you, if you close it, okay, so now I figure out what the problem is. I think, right? Yeah, it's somebody. So
Are we okay now?
yeah, well, okay now. So yeah.
Okay, great. So,
Charles, you are muted.
I was muted, yeah, because I was afraid, I don't know, afraid the feedback was being caused by me, so I've been on mute.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I can get off mute anytime you want me to. Do we have questions and stuff? What's going on? Are we ready for
some
that?
questions.
Yep.
We have a question. I think we have Niels. Can we bring him on?
Oh, just okay. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Actually, right now. Okay, Todd is in the process of inviting people. Before we bring on another person, bring on our official guest, can I fill in? I'll be the temporary guest to ask a question.
Absolutely, Patsy, please.
Okay. Oh, I love it, by the way. It's just like so fascinating. It's a beautiful, inspiring story. And I really like the opening that when you said that we are a time creature and there is also a non-time creature exists within us, which is the closest word to that is the consciousness. And I just feel like, oh, so moved. And because this is something that I have been feeling most of my life. And I also connect the, the limitation of the language. So I really feel like the possibility of the limit expression of the symbol of language is really calling us to go outside and beyond and break out of that limitation. And then your story helped me step outside of that confinement of this reality that is putting into my mind or my awareness. So my question to you is that, could you talk a little bit more about having this non-time creature embodying, fusing with the time creature? Does that also mean that our potential to perceive is limitless? And elaborate on that. Thank you.
Sure. Well, I think, this is part of what happens in meditation or in other practices where we step out of language and we step into something that's non-languageable. So we're in a time that is very particular. And while this is a story that seems to be a story of many words, I think the importance of it is actually tuning in to our inner sense about how this story is landing. And your perception of this segment where we speak about time creatures and this aspect of our consciousness, which is limitless, I think there are ways for us to be in touch with our higher selves, with our consciousness, in a way that we can step out of this linear nature of time. We do this in our imagination. We do this when we daydream. And as we're creating a new world, I think that the more we're able to tune in to this higher sense of ourself and build, not from our small selves, not from our day-to-day individual dealing with the problems of each and every day, but zooming out. And I think in the zooming out, we connect to the non-time creature aspect of ourselves. I hope that answers your question a little bit, at least. Charles, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I could add something to it. I think you kind of covered it. There's part of us that recognizes the unreality of our little lives and our linear ordering of our lives, and that has an intuition that's not based on linear time. Like the idea that and maybe you even experienced the past changing as you change. And you can say, well, did the past really change, or was it just my interpretation of it that changed? That question is an attempt to rationalize something that is understandable to our time and beings, our linear time beings. But there's something mysterious going on there too. And I think to really understand some of the teachings that were in the video we just watched, you have to draw on the part of you that is not a time-limited being to understand how Atlantis could colonize the past, for example, or how an entire history could disappear. Today we're seeing, so there's like these various parallel histories of Earth. And we saw some glimpses of one in our video today that kind of penetrate into the archaeological record as these like anomalies, but there's not enough of them to really enter mainstream archaeology. And as human consciousness changes, we could find lots and lots more fossils and relics that do confirm the Atlantean timeline. And it will look like it was there all along, and now we're finally discovering the evidence. But that's not what happens. It's that the shift of human consciousness shifts us into a reality in which the evidence exists. So the part of ourselves that can understand what I just said is the part of ourselves that is not a time-bound being. I'll just say that.
Right. I would say also, if we think about things like the Bosnian pyramids, they were there all along, but we only in recent years have, in fact, identified them as pyramids. And I think, as you said, as our consciousness expands, also our view expands of what's in front of us. I think we have Thomas. Do we have Thomas who had a question that we could bring him in?
Yes, we have sent invitation to Thomas and Nell, but we're waiting for their response.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe we just address some of the questions that are in the list here.
Right.
So someone is asking, oh gosh, it's long to read. I'm sorry. Someone had asked about people like George Lucas and the creators of modern culture, who have apparently pulled from a myth like this in the creation of their popular culture. And I would say that we would be looking at information that's in the collective consciousness that is potentially available to all of us. And depending on what we're looking for, how we're looking at it, these stories are accessible. We always say in Damanhur, we don't have the truth in our pocket. We don't feel like we have the truth in our pocket. But we had access to a spiritual guide, a teacher in this community who told us these stories. And these stories seem to have a resonance inside of us that made sense on some level. And that's part of what led me into working to assemble this. We've just seen part one. There are two additional parts to this story that will bring it into the present day and give more information about how in our day-to-day life this bigger story impacts us and how we can impact the story. I'm not sure, do we have, in terms of the guests, do we have someone who we can invite on screen?
Yes, we invited a few, but I think what's going to happen is, it's up to people to accept the invitation.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I think one of the most important pieces of this is the perception of time. And time not as a linear structure, but as really a vast kingdom that has many paths through it. And I think that very much relates to where we are today. It feels as if we've entered a time of a very fragmented time of a lot of contentious stories and conspiracy, and it seems like there's so many different stories playing simultaneously, depending on where we put our attention. And my sense is that, in fact, we're actually living on a fragmented timeline right now, where you could, in fact, be walking next to someone who's experiencing the reality in a completely different way than you are. And that can be this aspect of there being bifurcated or many diverse aspects of the same timeline running parallel. I know, Charles, you've done some research and are interested in this concept of timelines. And I think it's part of what attracted you initially to this work, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, that's right. The idea that we're not, you could say, kind of like you said, we're living in a fragmented timeline right now, or we're living not all in the same stream of time. Like if you imagine the flow of time not being one river, but being many, many, many paths, and maybe they're kind of going in the same direction. Maybe at some point some of them diverge. They stay parallel for a long time and then they split off. And you could even say that each of these timelines is in fact its own reality. I mean, what do we mean by reality, except something that is the product of past causes, and is like reality does not exist independently of past and future. So when you shift timelines, you're shifting reality. And the part of my interest in this is in the relationship between our consciousness, our state of being, and what we call reality outside of ourselves, that there is an intimate connection between the two. So this, as you were saying, like it comes up in our current time with all the conspiracy theories out there. I mean, you immerse yourself in one of them and it starts to seem very total. It starts to, it seems like it can explain everything. It all makes sense. Every data point can be interpreted to fit that. And it's almost like if you've ever done this, some of you I'm sure have done this, you enter into like a whole universe where, you know, it could, I don't know, like where Bill Gates is the literal antichrist and something, or in a whole other universe where the beneficent scientists are hard at work to save us from a dread disease. Like you can enter into any of these realities, and our rational minds, as programmed in our current civilization, would like to think that one of those is objectively true and the other ones aren't. We want to put truth outside of our choice. And by doing that, we kind of put ourselves we render ourselves into a kind of a victim. We put ourselves at the mercy of something that we have given our power to. And I know that Damanhur has a idea, and maybe if we can't bring other people on, maybe Betsy will just like, I'll just ask you to talk about this a little bit, has an idea of the densification of a timeline, where of all of the timelines going off into the future, there is one, I call it the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible, or a collection of futures that are incredibly beautiful, a new golden age, and that these are connected to the present by a thread that is maybe very tenuous at this time. And if that thread snaps, then that beautiful future, it ceases to exist in our reality as a possibility. But today there is still a thread that all of us can sense, which we call hope. That yes, we can create this future. We can, it's not really that we create it, it's that we align with it. And the things we do to align with it make that thread to that future more dense. So that's my perspective. And Betsy, maybe if you could speak from the Damanhurian perspective on that idea, that might be interesting to people.
Right, I can. I mean, as you've just seen part one of this story, and there are two more parts to this story. And in the second and third part, we bring it into contemporary times, and we speak about what we call the separation of the planes, and a point where, in fact, there's a new timeline that is lifted off of the old timeline, and the old timeline leading to a point in the future that is pejorative for humanity. But in fact, the idea that we've in fact entered a new timeline that we're able to densify every day by our each and every quotidian choice that we make in our lives. So if we are aligning with this aspect, this interior aspect of entropy, then we're in fact aligning with an old timeline. And if we're actually able to step beyond this aspect of our own entropic impulses and in our daily quotidian choices align with this more beautiful world that we know is possible, then we are in fact contributing to the densification of this new timeline.
Okay, so Betsy, could I interrupt? And I'd like to remind the people who we have sent out invitations, so they have to go click on the link in their email, which they provided with their questions, and the email would either come from Meta Jewel or come from Todd. And so right now, Betsy, could I read a question to you from one of the participants? Okay, this person is Morgan. So we have a guest. Should I we have two guests. Should I read the question or should I? Oh, Morgan, I'm about to read her question or his question. So let's let Morgan in. And
hi, Morgan, are you there?
Yeah.
Hi.
Need to turn on the video. More. Is this? Paul, did you here you are.
Hi. I think you might be muted.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Brilliant. Hi.
Hi. Yeah, I'm here. Can you see
Morgan,
me?
you're on screen. You can go ahead and ask your questions. I was gonna read it for you. So.
Okay. My question had to do with the understanding of evil. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay. I'm not sure. There's a little bit of a feedback. So my question had to do with me.
You may need to mute your YouTube stream that's going on, because otherwise you'll get feedback from yourself speaking here.
Okay. Okay, can you hear me now?
We sure can, yeah.
Okay.
And I love in your background looks like my StoryRoom walls, actually.
It's a script.
Yeah.
Cool. So my question had to do with the understanding of evil in the mythology, because you mentioned the forces of entropy, which you kind of just touched on. And you quickly talked about it being perceived as an enemy, but it's not actually an enemy. And I was just wondering more about that, and if you could say more about that.
Sure. So we speak about this idea of the forces of entropy. So the forces of entropy simply have a different overriding objective than this evolutionary force, which we would call the soul force of humanity. So the soul force of humanity has a desire to actually evolve and become more complex and is creative. So essentially, it's a piece of it is in everything and is working to create new information through its interaction in the world. While the force of entropy has an absolutely opposite desire. The force of entropy is not creative. It just wants to be. It doesn't want to change or evolve or become more complex. It would prefer that all of the life force in the galaxy were eliminated and the world was just form without life. So it's not the sinister evil guy in the movie. It's really this concept of entropy being having become anthropomorphized in a way that there are actually entities that are fighting for that return to nothingness.
A return to nothingness?
Well, it's a return to the world of form in its original existence. So when we spoke about these primeval laws that intersected and in their fundamental changes, they created the world of form. So the world of form, it just was. It wasn't evolving, it wasn't changing. And so the forces of entropy would like to see the universe, a form, return to just being, not evolving or becoming more complex.
I can add something to that, actually, because we're seeing that actually in our current time, where the primeval spirit, the primeval divinity that Betsy talked about, you could call that the spirit of life, and it's reflected or embodied in the tendency of matter in our universe to become more and more complex, to become more and more alive. The history of Earth is a history of more and more life, from the first archaea, the first bacteria, multicellular organisms, flowering plants, biodiversity and interconnection increasing and increasing and increasing, human beings, civilization, culture, like this, this is just more and more complexity, more and more organization. Whereas the forces of entropy, you could also call them anti-life forces. They want to, another way to put it is that they're the forces of control. They're the forces of lockdown. They're the forces of preservation, keeping everything the same. And ultimately, they are anti-life, because life is not about stasis. Life is about continual change, continual evolution. So in our current, so these archetypal battles, these wars, these four defeats of humanity that is in this mythology, these are not just events in the past. They are also playing out right now. The present is a microcosm. In a way, you could say that these battles are not even finished, because the present changes the past. So we can see what the battle looks like, what these wars look like when they are, what is their projection into our present time. And we see right now the forces of keeping things the same, of order, of lockdown, and making sure nothing changes. And let's, like, that force is very strong. I don't want to get too controversial here, but I think people understand what I'm talking about. Like, what is life and what is anti-life?
It's a great way to state it. That's exactly what it is. You know, the forces of entropy are the anti-life forces. Yeah. So thank you for your question.
Thank you. Thank you.
I hope it helps your outline on your wall there.
Thank you. Yeah, and interestingly enough, I put on my Star Wars t-shirt this morning without even thinking about it.
Perfect. You're tuned into something on a higher level there. So great. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you, Morgan. So this is Betsy speaking. And Betsy, Thomas is here. Are you ready for her?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So we're gonna turn on her video and.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, welcome.
Hey. Yeah, it's Thomas Atwood. It's my wife Debbie's Zoom account. It was complicated.
I just thought you'd gotten a haircut, so.
Well, it's great to be here today. And I want to thank you, Betsy, for the time and attention you've given to this gift. And I love the story. Thank you so much. And yes, it evokes so many things. I mean, the story is consistent with the process theology that I inhabit as a Westerner. I think it's consistent, frankly, with the message of the historical Jesus too. But I see a timeline, a plot line here that is everywhere in art. And two examples that came to mind were Star Wars and Justice League, of course. Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious, I mean, I have my own ideas about it, but I'm curious to know how you think about how Lucas and Snyder accessed that story.
Well, I think this story is present. You know, as I said earlier, I think it's in the collective consciousness. And so, you know, when you're a storyteller, you're looking for potentially as a storyteller, looking for what those epic stories might be. I mean, the thing about George Lucas was he tuned into archetypes. He created a very archetypical story. And so it speaks universally. And part of why I think this story is a story that represents global consciousness is because it has these universal archetypes in it, and creates a sort of scaffolding for a bigger story of humanity than we've traditionally found in our history books. So I think that, in fact, it's interesting when religion and mysticism sort of parted company, the mysticism started to come out in popular culture. So the superheroes, when it was no longer from a theological perspective okay to have superpowers, whether that was telepathy or any of what we would say are senses that we've lost, those characters started to appear in popular culture. So they were still finding their expression in popular culture. And I think that that's why we have these sort of universally popular myths like Star Wars, and why they're so resonant is because they speak to something that on some core level feels like it might be a truth for us. I hope that answers your question.
That's a beautiful and articulate answer. Thanks again, Betsy. Really appreciate the program.
Thank you for being with us today. I see other faces up there. I don't know if is Mark someone else who might have a question?
Hi.
Hi, Mark.
Hi. Is this okay? This is yeah. I think my question is kind of a series of observations that are kind of in search of a concise question. So maybe pardon the rambling if it happens. I'll try to keep it concise. But one thing that really spoke to me about the story was this idea of senses. You threw out the term junk DNA, but really what it spoke to me was this idea of intuition, and that we all have these innate senses. This you'll sometimes hear people say it's synchronicity or deja vu or coincidence, but we all have had observed times where we have these intuitions where we just know is right, or we've communicated with someone without words or across great distances, and it kind of makes me wonder: is this possibly the rumblings of what you might refer to as these lost senses, these senses that we don't have names for, we don't universally accept as true, but that really do harken back to a more fully capable humanity? So that's kind of the first part of the question. And then it relates then to this other inclination that we might have as humanity, which is development, which I think all of us could agree is happening. We are developing. We're developing new technologies. We're developing new modes of communication and new ways of being connected and such. So that's also inherent in us, but we've also lost the connection to where that proclivity for development kind of was born. So now we have these lost senses, this desire to develop, but then this contamination of entropy, where we don't ultimately want things to change. So it seems as if while ignoring and vilifying our lost senses and continuing to develop because it's part of our origin story, but then developing in a way that is in kind of reverence to the entropic force, which is kind of destruction and non-development and non-creativity. Would that be an appropriate, I guess, understanding of where we find ourselves right now in humanity and why things might be developing in such a way that feels against our core, against who we know ourselves to be, but also still pro-development? And hopefully that was...
Yeah, no, you absolutely are, I think, on the right track as you speak about this. So the senses that were sort of universally turned off for humanity are senses like, for example, the ability to communicate without words, telepathy, would be one of the lost senses, the ability to communicate with the animal world. Again, a lost sense. So after each of these 4 battles, when humanity had senses turned off and archetypes lost, essentially we were left lobotomized. That doesn't mean that there's not the potential to reawaken those senses. And much of the work that we do in Damanhur, in our open university here, we have courses that are directed, in fact, at reawakening some of these lost senses. So that might be a course in astral travel. It might be a course in researching past lives. So these inner senses, when we're able to start to open our minds to them, we have the potential to start to reawaken them. The dream, the sense of dreaming. In major part, we've lost our sense of dreaming. There are people who dream lucidly, but that's not just what the sense of dreaming is about. The sense of dreaming is about being able to also connect our dreams to our desires and manifest them in the world. And so these senses have been corrupted within humanity. And I think this idea of enlightenment would be this reconquering or reconnecting to our lost senses. And yes, the reawakening of those senses also has an oppositional force to it. These forces of entropy don't want humanity to become connected to its fullest potential again. So I hope that answers your question. And I have another face that just lit up on stage, Rob Evans.
Yes, thank you, Mark.
Hi there. Thank you so much for such a clear exposition of really complex material. Well done. Chickens and dogs and external intrusions notwithstanding, that was actually one of my favorite parts. But
no, mine too. A little lightness before the heavy battle, right?
It was wonderful. And here's my question. There's the skeptic in me recognizes that for anything to be published in a newspaper, pretty exoteric, not esoteric, it has to be corroborated by several independent, reliable sources. I almost want a Mulder "I want to believe" t-shirt on while I ask this question, which I don't have, but we can all imagine that. The question is really based on knowing that intuition is important, and my own intuition gives me information, but maybe not always accurate information. How do you corroborate what comes through intuitive sources? And yes, you can put it into philosophy and poetry and so on, but this is different. This is aimed at an historical record beyond a time chasm and all of that. How do you corroborate what emerges and what has emerged into this story? So many things make intuitive sense that are wrong, and we can just turn to our friends at QAnon and listen to some of that. So I'd rather not go down that road. So the simple question is, how do you corroborate information before it becomes accepted, blessed, included?
Well, I tell you, it's a brilliant question, and it's exactly why this piece exists and is being put into the world now, is to find where it has resonance with other people who have pieces of this story, who can actually support it. Two of the people I invited today onto this screening were Graham Hancock and Michael Tellinger, because they've been, in fact, working in the physical evidence of antediluvian societies. And so I want them to see this and know if hearing these dates has resonance with the physical work that they've done. In the story room over the past 8 years, I've had hundreds of people come through, including many actually physicists. And in 2014, Jean Houston was with me in the story room. And after spending many hours there, she said to me, Betsy, I really believe this could be this core mythology of humanity representing global consciousness that my friend Joseph Campbell predicted the emergence of. But here's the problem with it. It's beyond the worldview of probably 99% of the people on the planet right now. And yet, much of it is consistent with current frontier science. You now need to connect with physicists, cosmologists, and researchers who are working on the frontier of their fields. And synchronically, at that point, I became connected to Irvin Laszlo. And Irvin Laszlo had created something called the Laszlo Institute of New Paradigm Research. And he was inviting physicists and researchers and people who were working at the absolute apex of their fields, who had hit a glass ceiling unless they could bring consciousness into their research. And so you'll find, on my YouTube channel, I began to interview those people in order to start to support this bigger mythology that I was working to bring into the world.
Yes.
So, I can't say to you, this is 100% true. This comes from the teachings of the spiritual founder of our community. And so my desire is to actually put it into the world and see where it actually has resonance with other research in the world.
I really appreciate that, Betsy. I'm a business consultant. I work in organization, total quality, stuff back in the old days. And data is all important.
Yeah.
But even the great apostle of data, W. Edwards Deming, said, judgment is data if it comes from the right person. And that's a slippery slope, but it's an important one. And I wonder if I'm allowed to follow up along these lines, if I may. And if I'm not, just cut me off. It's all right. But
I think, sure, go ahead.
The idea of a time chasm, that some information made it across, but some information didn't. How do you understand that almost as a filter, not an absolute chasm? That was like, that's an anomaly I'd love to explore. And that's it.
Right. So I think, this speaks to the work of a dear friend, a physicist by the name of Jude Coravan, who's speaking about the world as a holographic universe that's made up of information vibrating at frequency. So if you think about this chasm in time as something that actually corrupted the space-time continuum, this information as the smallest piece of anything got disconnected. It couldn't make it across that corruption in the space-time continuum. And so as that is potentially smoothed out, we will start to see more physical evidence from the past because the information will start to make it across. I think, for me, if we could hack the hologram of reality and insert new information there, we could in fact correct all of the past entropic incidents. So I think thinking about our reality as this holographic reality, where with new information put into it, we can shift things not just in the future, but also in the past.
I'd love to add a little bit to that, if I may.
Oh, please.
To both questions that you asked. One for the second one, like the time chasm thing. one way to look at it is that information, or we could say events, can quantum tunnel across that chasm. Just like, or you could imagine like two parallel timelines, and we've shifted onto one, and there's a chasm between ours and the one in which Atlantis actually happened. Yet sometimes artifacts from that other timeline, because like all things exist in a quantum superposition of states, sometimes they can leak into our timeline. And this kind of bears a little bit on the first part of your question, the first question you asked. This idea that there's, intuition and then there's corroborating evidence. Well, it's actually like, yeah, the distinction makes some sense, but we can never ultimately surrender our intuition to corroborating evidence, because at some point you have to use your intuition simply to decide what corroborating evidence to accept. Like what other witness is reliable and who isn't reliable, what media source is reliable to corroborate and what isn't. Because if you talk to a QAnon person, they're going to be like, oh yeah, the evidence is all over the place. And they're going to show you all kinds of things that they consider reliable. So ultimately, we're talking about an agreement in society. We're talking about a collective agreement that filters what the evidence even is. So yeah, I just wanted to put that in there that well, I think I've said it, so I will pass it on.
Thank you both very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Betsy, we have I don't know if it's a lady or a gentleman, like I can't pronounce the name. So Arimas, yeah?
Aramis, yes.
Okay. So we're gonna put her on now.
I think it's him.
It's him, okay. So we have tried to turn on this video, but he's not accepting the video being turned on. So maybe he's not here. Maybe he stepped away from the screen.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so how about before he accepts the video, I have a question from the form. Cheryl said, how do we get rid of contamination and get our senses back? So that's a short question. Do you want to answer that?
Well, I think this is what happens when we start to engage in this spiritual path. We start to expand our mind to incorporate aspects that could be lost senses. We have, as I said before, an open university in Damanhur where you can study certain subjects that relate to lost senses. And I believe that's true in many schools, mystery schools on the planet. So getting rid of the contamination is again about raising our level of consciousness in the world. And in fact, being conscious of our every choice on our day-to-day path.
Thank you, Betsy. So here we are, our last guest, I think. According to time, I think we can take one more guest, and it's perfect. Welcome.
So is that Aramis?
Yes. Aramis, you can speak now. I think your video and audio are connected, and you're live.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much.
Nice to see you.
Likewise, for such a beautiful presentation. I'm here in Bolivia, and internet is not so good, but I was getting in and out. I was waiting for this presentation for some days.
Oh,
thank you so much. And Betsy, I have a question. Basically, I was thinking about this missing link and missing knowledge. It seems as humanity and animals were dying off, but the only things that survived and even were more complex were plant kingdom. Is it possible that certain knowledge is encoded in plant kingdom? Because to me, for example, maybe the biggest shifts of consciousness or understanding was when I was changing my food intake. And I know in certain, for example, here in Bolivia, close to the Amazon, there are people that they do dietas for 9 months or longer with certain master plants, and they tell that plants start talking to them and they get kind of a knowledge about the past and the future. Is it possible that we as a humanity were taken away from all the food supply and that way as well disconnected from the knowledge?
I'm actually really happy that you bring this up, because one of the areas of research in our community has been around the consciousness of the plant world. And we have, in fact, created technology that allows plants to interact with humans. And I was involved in that project for a period of time. And what I came to believe was, in fact, that the plant world has a higher level of consciousness than the human or the animal world. If you think about it, I mean, every day we're breathing. The plant world is allowing us to breathe in oxygen every day, despite the way we treat the plant world. If we look at the interconnectivity of the plant world through the mycelium, they have a much more advanced internet than we have. If you cut off 3/4 of a plant, it will regenerate and grow back. What intelligence? If you do that to a human, we're finished. And so is it not possible that the plant kingdom is a more conscious and evolved kingdom than the human or animal kingdom? That would be the question that I would raise.
Yeah, I think so. That's why it's so important for us to choose wise dietary choices to see what we eat here.
I absolutely agree with you. Yes.
And I'm very excited to go deeper here and the jungle. And there's so much knowledge coming up, so many different people coming and opening up certain things that I could never imagine existing. So,
well, enjoy your journey there. Yes, indeed.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank
Maybe
you.
as a community, we should kind of step back a little bit in order to move forward too.
I think certainly there are indigenous peoples on the planet who do live in that kind of contact and whose senses around the connection to the plant world are still intact. So
thank you.
Patsy,
have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks for being with us. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
So thank you, Betsy and Charles. So would you like to say a closing before I point people to a couple of links?
I'll just, thank you, Patsy and the team. And I just want to say how much I appreciate the hard work and courage that it takes to put something out into the world that is that diverges so greatly from what most people accept as true. So that's a noble service that you've offered, and I want to convey my thanks for that.
Thank you, Charles, and I must mirror that also in my gratitude to you for being open to sharing this content on your platform and for joining us here. a few years ago around this work of the Story Room. I think that having a community where this can land softly will help us to be able to hopefully share it with more people in the coming time. So thank you, and thank you, Patsy, and all the team here. It's really been a very special moment for us to be able to screen this for the first time.
Yeah, likewise, it's really a magical time, a magical moment, because really, like you said, when we zoom out of this personal stories, personal narrative of, this life, I was born by these parents, wow, our consciousness can take us to like infinite possibilities. And that's the power that we have. And thank you for being the conduit, both of you and all of my friends and all of the ones that are here to inspire us, each other. It's just like such an amazing time. I just absolutely love it. So I want to point to people to the right at the bottom of the description under the live Zoom has a Patreon link to support this campaign, this tremendous effort and courage for Betsy and the film producer to bring this to us. And also, with Charles hosting it, everything is available without any expectation of any financial support. However, if you feel moved that you want to support this campaign moving forward, financial means is something that sustains this part of the outreach. So we welcome you to support Betsy and Edgar's endeavor. And I think that's it. And I'm gonna put up a card to, say goodbye to you. And then the questions that you have submitted, well, what we will do is we will copy it and we will post it in NAS, a new and ancient story community, for continuing interactions with that. And Betsy is a member of our community, so she will be there to answer your questions. That's it. Thank you very much. I love you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.